time comes, don't postpone it. When others doubt and out, you don't condone it. Truth be told, yourself is your toughest opponent. When your moment comes, grab hold and own it. Never let go, stand tall and hold tight. Overcoming obstacles is the objective in life. Doubters overnight, and onto them you shine bright. Cause inside your head, on goes the light. Ignite, play the intuition upon the stars in the night that glisten.
So I've been seeing a lot of things talking about people making commentary. Interestingly enough, the ones I've noticed that have been making the commentary are wealthy black people making the commentary about we should not be rioting, we should not be looting, we should not be tearing up our own communities. And then there's been an argument of the other side of we should be hitting them in the pocket. We should be focusing on the blackout days where we don't spend money. But you know, I feel like we should do both. And I feel like I support both. And I'll tell you why I support both. I support both because when you have a civil unrest like this, there are three types of people in the streets. There are the protesters, there are the rioters, and there are the looters. The protesters are there because they actually care about what is happening in the community. They want to raise their voices, and they are there strictly to protest. You have the rioters who are angry, who are anarchists, who really just want to fuck shit up, and that's what they're going to do regardless. And then you have the looters. And the looters almost exclusively are just there to do that, to loot. Now, people are like, well, what did you gain? Well, what did you get from looting? I think that as long as we're focusing on the what, we're not focusing on the why, and that's my issue with that. As long as we're focusing on what they're doing, we're not focusing on why they're doing. And some people are like, well, those aren't people who are legitimately angry about what's happening. Those are people who just want to get stuff. Okay, well then, let's go with that. Let's say that's what it is. Let's ask ourselves why in this country in 2020, the financial gap between poor blacks and the rest of the world is at such a distance that people feel like their only hope and only opportunity to get some of the things that we flaunt and flash in front of them all the time is to walk through a broken glass window and get it. That they are so hopeless that getting that necklace, getting that TV, getting that change, getting that bed, getting that phone, whatever it is that they're gonna get, is that in that moment when the riots happen and if they present an opportunity of looting, that's their only opportunity to get it. We need to be questioning that why. Why are people that poor? Why are people that broke? Why are people that food insecure, that clothing insecure, that they feel like their only shot, that they are shooting their shot by walking through a broken glass window to get what they need? And then people want to talk about, well, there's plenty of people who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and got it on their own. Why can't they do that? Let me explain to you something about economics in America. And I'm so glad that as a child, I got an opportunity to spend time at Push where they taught me this, is that we must never forget that economics was the reason that black people were brought to this country. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Do you understand that? That's what we came to do. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Now, if I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything, and then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa, that was Rosewood. Those are places where we built black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play. And every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your Monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood, how can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the fuck do I give a shit about burning the fucking Football Hall of Fame, about burning a fucking Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give a fuck. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own by our bootstraps in Tulsa and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so fuck your Target. Fuck your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
The video of Jones was posted online by her friend and went viral in just a few days. It has been viewed more than 2 million times. She has a new book out entitled How We Can Win, Race History and Changing the Money Game That's Rigged. And she is joining us now here in studio. Kimberly, welcome. First, we have to point out your shirt. Hood girls can be heroes too.
Such a great shirt.
Love it. No one's wondering what it says. I just want to start talking about your book. You focus on what's called the longest and most lucrative affirmative action plan. Mm-hmm. What was that, and who benefited from it?
Well, it's interesting because it's not who people would assume benefited from it, right? So between 1925 and 1965, the U.S. government underwrote $200 billion in home lending, and that went 98% to white America to build the white American suburb. Many of those mortgages actually had clauses in them that said the homes could not be resold to people who were either African American or Jewish. And so when we think about asking for assistance, and really not a handout, but a hand up, America understood the charge that the way to build a healthy nation was one through a road to home ownership, but also to make sure the middle class was thriving and successful. And those extensions were not lended to people of color. And so the impact of that is still affecting us now. I tell people all the time, like, I'm not really rooting for Black excellence because giants are going to become giants no matter what. What I'm really rooting for is mediocrity, for everyone to be able to have a healthy, happy lived experience, and that you don't have to be a superhero to do that. You can just be a regular person.
I love that. It's so important because, like you said, people point out to, well, look at Gayle King, look at Oprah, look at all of these, Black women, for instance, who've been so amazingly successful because they're excellent. Yes, they are excellent, but not everyone can be excellent, but everyone still deserves the same shot, right?
Exactly. That's exactly it. And it's just like, there is nothing wrong with being centered around raising a family and having a great lived experience, and maybe just want to take a vacation a few times a year, and that should be accessible to everyone.
And so in your book, you write about economic lynching. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, there's been a system of keeping people of color marginalized through economic systems. And I really think that's why education is so important, because really what education does is nurture empathy, right? So if you have access to this information, you view things in a very different way. People are unfamiliar with the histories of things like the Freedmen's Bank. The Freedmen's Bank was the only bank post-Reconstruction that African Americans were able to bank with, and due to very bad mishandling of the bank. The bank was collapsed, and what was lost was around what would be the equivalent today of around $60 million. It was not protected by the government in the way in which other banks was, and that money was just lost. And you're talking about 2 generations ago, my grandmother. So this is within our lifetime in terms of touch, right? Because my grandmother remembers standing in the lobby of a Freedmen's Bank.
Wow. It's impressive.
Kimberly, you write about Black people thriving during Reconstruction and give a stark contrast to the Jim Crow era. Do you believe that the U.S. government had put laws in place to protect the gains the Black community created during that time? The wealth gap would be much smaller today. It
would be extremely smaller. That is where we made our mistake, which is why I'm so frustrated that Reconstruction is not a fully taught era of time. Everything that Lincoln put in place after the formerly enslaved people started to integrate Black. There was an amazing General Oliver Howard, who the historically Black college, Howard University, is actually named after. And he was put over the Freedmen's Bureau. And he wasn't given much money, but what he was given was 850,000 acres of land. And so he started to give that land out. And African Americans who had lots of skills, right? Because they're coming off of the plantation where they were doing all of the work. So they had all these skills and they were thriving. And we had 13 Black lawmakers in the federal government. And when you look at the state houses in places like Louisiana and Virginia, you're seeing all of this integration of Black people growing and thriving. And then Lincoln was shot and Johnson took office and began to revert everything that was done by the Freedmen's Bureau and that was done by Lincoln. And I feel like that's where the disconnect happened to growth. And because it was never fixed, it just continued to snowball.
How much do you think the progress of Black people in this country has been met by progress, which is then met by resistance and backtracking? How many times have you seen that happen through history?
Well, I actually made a list of all of the incidents that I could find, and then I found more incidents since I wrote the book. And it's a page, and this is not detailed information on each one. It's just listing each one, and it's a page. I mean, I know people have become familiar with Tulsa and with Rosewood, but they are just 2 of dozens of instances that happened like that. Even here in New York, Seneca Village, which was a place where African Americans and mostly Irish immigrants had settled and were beginning to thrive, and then they lost that land due to eminent domain, and that's how you get Central Park.
Is there a way of estimating how much money the U.S. economy lost due to those Reconstruction era laws not being enforced?
It's hundreds of millions of dollars.
You write about wanting systems to change rather than the government just cutting a check, meaning reparations. Why is that so important?
Because I think we've been impacted on so many levels that just issuing checks with also the safety nets and education that will come along with that would not breed the success that we're looking for. And really the fight that we're in right now is a fight of equity. And so I think because this was systemic and that there are still pieces in the system, things that are integrated into the system that we're unfamiliar with, it's going to take the dismantling, readjusting, and introduction of new systems in order to battle that. Because we have to look at not just the economics of things, but we also have to look at education, healthcare, land ownership, redlining, gerrymandering. There's so many pieces that it really is going to take a bureau, in a sense, to attack it all.
And it's interesting you mentioned equity. You've made a point to make the distinction between equity and equality.
Yeah. And I think especially now, since we're in Black History Month, this is the perfect opportunity to say it. I think we do a disservice to the people who came before us to say that things haven't changed. And I understand people's sentiment when they're saying we're still fighting some of the same battles. But just even the fact that I'm sitting here having this conversation with you, that I flew in today and sat wherever I wanted to sit, that I stayed in a hotel, and if I wanted to make access to the pool, that is due to the fight of people like Dr. King and Rosa Parks. And so I don't want to do a disservice to their memory by saying we haven't made any change. We have made change. But I think what is happening now is that there is a shift, and what needs to happen. And I always say, I wish I had said at the end of that speech that what we want is, instead of equality and not revenge, is equity and not revenge, because I think that's what it is now. It's an equity fight.
Kimberly Jones, it's such an honor to meet you. Thank you for being here. Good luck.
Yeah, so great to have you.
Thank you so much.
Now is my time to shine. Let's When your time comes, don't postpone it. When others down and out, you don't condone it. Truth be told, yourself is your toughest opponent. When your moment comes, grab hold and own it. Never let go, stand tall and hold tight. Overcoming obstacles is the objective in life.